So have you ever thought of the status of a pathologist, a laboratory physician, and how that affects the career of such physicians? So I'm going to talk to you about the stand-up pathologist, thriving, surviving, and changing the world. Now, every time you see a pathologist, they're almost always sitting down and with bad posture, and they look like they've been sitting down for a long time, and they're going to be sitting down, and they're always sitting down. On the other hand, in the medical workforce, you have nurses who are always standing up and running around and doing important stuff, and clinicians and surgeons, all of whom do most of their work standing. And so it seems to me there's a natural sort of status difference between the physician group that's always just sitting around and the group that is up and active and so on. And, you know, it goes beyond this perceived status to actually life and death, because it's now well established that the faster you walk, the longer you'll live, and there is very good data now with hundreds of thousands of people on that. And the more you sit, the sooner you will die. And the more you sit in the day, the more likely it is that you'll die and have a short life and so on. And the correlation's very good. And you cannot correct it with exercise. If you sit a lot and exercise like mad, that sitting is still a very serious risk factor. So you may have thought that there's really no solution for this because pathologists use microscopes, and microscopes don't generally use when you're standing up. But actually, there is a solution, because now in the age of the virtual microscope, there is a virtual microscope system that you can approach from a standing position. So rather than being sedentary the whole day, you can be up and part of the medical action. It has a completely different feel from the work life of a pathologist today. And it's not just one person who can use these large touch screens where you can enlarge the image and move the image and change things, but multiple different people can do this at the same time. You can have kind of a strategic conversation around this large touch screen. What is that like? Well, have you seen a movie where they're planning like war games and they've got exciting action going on, and you know where the ships are going to be and where the next attack is? It's kind of like that, right? Whereas what laboratory physicians do sitting down on a microscope right now has none of that excitement. You would not connect it to war games or a command center. So this giant multi-touch active screen Fimic web microscope from Finland is compatible with all the existing virtual microscopy systems. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of video on it. So the system works with both iPhone and Android phone, and also with these large touch screens. So, and you can have interaction between the two. You can see the way the gestures affect the image. You can use it on a laptop. You can use it on these large tablets. Look how comfortable and active that is in comparison to the usual pathologist's work life. And here you have an entire wall of these multiple screens. Laboratory physician could get a delusion of grandeur from such a grand screen, but there's nothing like that now. So what about this idea that the more you sit, the sooner you will die. Here's the data on this from an article in 2012. And it's true of healthy subjects, it's true of those with pre-existing conditions. Exercise, physical activity does not correct this effect. You can see that those dark bars are taller than the other bars, no matter which category you're in, and no matter how much physical exercise. And for those of you who walk a lot and walk fast, this should be very encouraging, because you can see that the spread between different gaits of how fast you walk gets greater the younger you are. So at your age, that spread must be tremendous. And so people your age who are walking fast are going to live, presumably, 20 or 30 years longer than people who have a slower gait, if you extrapolate back from this. And believe it or not, there's a lot of data on lifestyle and the health of different kinds of physicians. So let's see whether pathologists lead healthy lives. They're sort of in the middle in terms of how many physicians are overweight. The most overweight physicians are general surgeons, the least overweight are dermatologists. We're somewhere in the middle. The percentage who exercise twice a week is greater than the US average, but the more obese a laboratory physician is, the less likely it is that they will exercise. And what about happiness? We're above average in terms of happiness, both at home and at work. The happiest physician is the ophthalmologist. In terms of health overall, pathologists tend to rate their health as good to excellent. So most of the risk factors are not very great there, and so one would conclude then that the sedentary status in the workplace is a major threat to pathologists' longevity and leadership status. The Standup Pathologist with this giant touchscreen command module can change the world. And the large touchscreens are also a very appealing resource for education and for recruiting people into the profession. So I hope I've convinced you that things are going to be a lot different for pathologists as a specialty if they just stand up and walk around and use these large touch screens. So that ends this presentation.